Tax season. It seems like everyone's thinking about it this time of year. Crunching numbers, and of course, waiting for those refunds.
Yeah, especially since last year the average refund was over $3,000.
Right. That's a big chunk of change for most people. Before we go any further, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future financial tips. We want to make sure you're getting the most out of your return. So let's get into what we know about the 2024 tax season so far. Good news is the IRS has already started processing returns.
That's right. And if you filed electronically and chose direct deposit, you can probably expect your refund within 21 days.
21 days. Not bad at all. What about those who like to stick with the paper filing method, though?
Well, paper filers will need to be a little more patient. Looks like they're looking at a wait time of 4 weeks or maybe longer.
Makes sense. So is there any way to keep track of your refund? You know, waiting can be tough.
Oh, for sure. The IRS has a really great tool called Where's My Refund? It's on their website, irs.gov. And they also have a mobile app called IRS To Go, if you prefer to track things on the go.
All right, so Where's My Refund? And IRS To Go. Got it. Anything else about these tools that people might not know?
Actually, yeah. The Where's My Refund tool has been updated recently. Instead of just getting those vague processing updates, it now gives you a more detailed explanation of where your return stands in the process.
That's awesome. No more constant refreshing, huh? But let's be real. Sometimes those refunds get delayed. What are some of the reasons why that might happen?
Well, one of the big ones is claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit or the Additional Child Tax Credit. Because of federal law, the IRS can't actually issue those refunds until the middle of February.
So when can people realistically expect to see their refunds if they're claiming these credits?
The IRS is aiming to have those processed by March 3rd, as long as everything else is okay with the return. Just a heads up, though, the Where's My Refund tool won't be updated with EITC and ACTC statuses until February 22nd.
Okay, good to know. Any other common things that might cause delays?
Definitely errors or missing information on tax returns are a big one. It's so important to double-check every detail before submitting.
Double check. Got it. Why are those errors such a problem, though?
Well, any discrepancy between your return and the IRS's records could trigger a manual review.
Manual review. Oh boy, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. It could add weeks or even months to the processing time.
Okay, so what can you do if you're worried about a delay? How can you avoid those issues?
First things first, make absolutely sure your bank account information is correct. It sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many people mess that up. And make sure you've reported all your taxable income too, that everything matches up with IRS records. Those little things can make a big difference.
Good advice. You know, I bet some of our listeners have had to deal with those refund delays.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you ever had to wait longer than expected? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you're finding this information helpful, give us a like. It really helps others find this too.
We love hearing your stories and tips. It's all about making tax season a little less stressful, right?
For sure. So let's say your refund is approved, but you're still waiting for the money to show up in your account. What's going on there?
Well, don't panic just yet. It's important to remember that bank processing times and federal holidays can also affect things.
Right. So even if the IRS is quick, your bank might need some time to catch up.
Exactly. They could take an extra 1 to 5 business days to process the deposit. And if you chose to get a paper check, well, that's going to take even longer.
Yeah,
The Treasury Department actually says that paper checks are 16 times more likely to be delayed, lost, or stolen compared to direct deposit.
16 times.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a pretty good reason to go digital, I'd say.
I think so. It's the safest and fastest way to go these days.
Absolutely. So what if you think something's wrong with your refund? What should you do?
You should always check the Where's My Refund tool first. That's your best bet for getting updates. But if you filed electronically and it's been more than 21 days or 6 weeks for paper filers and you're not getting any updates, then it might be time to contact the IRS directly.
Contact the IRS directly.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there like a hotline or a special department for that?
Yeah, you can call their automated refund hotline for updates or reach out to them through their website for more specific stuff. And good news, they've really improved their online and in-person support this year, trying to make things easier for everyone.
That's good to hear. What are some of the new support options they're offering?
Well, they've got this new IRS online account. You can use it to see details from your most recent tax return, track your refund, and even sign tax forms electronically. It's great for managing everything online.
That sounds super convenient. What about people who would rather talk to someone in person, though?
They've thought of that too. They've actually hired more people for their taxpayer assistance centers. So if you need help in person, you can go there.
It's great that they're offering more options this year. making it easier for everyone to get help.
Definitely. They're really trying to improve things for taxpayers.
Before we move on, I want to remind everyone that most refunds do arrive on time. So try not to stress if you don't see yours right away. Patience is key.
You got it. Just stay informed, be prepared, and try to manage expectations.
Exactly. Let's recap what we've covered so far, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
All right, so first, remember to keep checking the Where's My Refund tool for updates. Second, accuracy is super important when you're filing. Double check everything to avoid delays. Third, be patient. The system takes time and rushing can lead to mistakes. And finally, know what your options are if you run into any delays. The IRS has a lot of resources available to help.
Awesome summary.
Okay.
Before we move on to some of the more interesting parts of our tax refund rundown, I want to leave you with a question. We've talked about the chance of delays and how to deal with them. So how could you adjust your financial planning to be ready for those unexpected waiting times? It's something to think about as we go through this tax season.
That's a good point. It's always smart to have a little financial cushion, especially when dealing with something as unpredictable as tax season.
Totally agree. So let's switch gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture. Why are tax refunds such a big deal anyway?
Well, it really comes down to how our tax system works. When you get a refund, it means you've overpaid your taxes during the year. It's kind of like giving Uncle Sam an interest-free loan.
Whoa! An interest-free loan to the government. I never thought of it like that. So I'm getting a huge refund. Does that mean I'm doing something wrong?
Not necessarily wrong, but it might mean that your withholding isn't set up in the best way. You know that W-4 form you fill out when you start a new job?
Right, the W-4. The one that always makes my head spin.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It tells your employer how much tax to take out of each paycheck.
Right. So it determines how much money I actually see in my paycheck versus how much goes to the government.
Exactly. And if too much is being withheld, you'll end up with a bigger refund. It might seem like a bonus, but you're basically letting the government hold on to your money for free all year.
I see what you mean. So would I be better off changing my withholding so I get a smaller refund but have more money in my paycheck throughout the year?
For a lot of people, yeah, that's a smarter move. Having more money in your pocket throughout the year gives you more flexibility to do things like invest, build up your savings, or pay off debts.
Yeah, I can definitely see the appeal of that. But I get it. Some people love that big refund. It's like a little windfall.
True. It can feel that way, even though it's your own money coming back to you. Some people find it easier to save or make a big purchase with a lump sum rather than smaller amounts throughout the year. It's a psychological thing.
Yeah, I totally get that. So if someone wants to adjust their withholding, how do they do that? Is it complicated?
Not at all. You just need to update your W-4 form with your employer.
Yeah.
And there's actually a really useful tool on the IRS website called the Tax Withholding Estimator. It can help you figure out what the right number is for your situation.
That's awesome. So it really depends on what works best for each person and their financial goals. There's no one-size-fits-all answer, right?
Exactly. You've got to find what makes the most sense for you.
Speaking of finding what works, I'm sure some people are thinking, how can I get my refund as fast as possible? Any secret tricks to speed up the process?
If only there were a magic button. Unfortunately, there's no way to really speed things up once you've filed. The best way to make sure things go smoothly and quickly is to file accurately and early. The sooner you file, the sooner you'll get your refund.
That makes sense. What about those last-minute filers, though? Any advice for them?
If you're filing close to the deadline, the most important thing is to triple-check everything. Even a tiny error can cause big delays. And always choose e-filing and direct deposit. It's the fastest way to get your refund.
Got it. E-filing and direct deposit. The dream team for a speedy refund. So we talked about this before, but I want to go back to the people who really depend on their refunds to get by. Delays can be a huge problem for them. What can they do if they're struggling financially while they wait?
That's so important. For some people, a tax refund isn't just extra money. It's essential for paying bills and covering basic needs. If you're in that situation and facing hardship while waiting for your refund, don't give up. There are resources out there to help you bridge the gap.
That's good to hear. What kind of resources are we talking about? Where can people go for help?
Well, a lot of local community organizations, charities, and faith-based groups offer financial assistance or emergency support. Don't be afraid to reach out and see what's available in your area. You might be surprised by the support networks that are out there.
It's great to know those options exist. What about other possibilities? Are there any resources people might not think of?
Yeah, a lot of utility companies and creditors have hardship programs that can offer temporary relief or payment arrangements. It's always worth contacting them directly and explaining your situation. They might be more understanding than you think.
That's a great reminder. It's important to remember you're not alone, and there are people and organizations who want to help. It's all about knowing where to look. Okay, let's talk about something a little less pleasant, tax scams. Unfortunately, tax season is like prime time for scammers trying to steal your information or your money. What are some things people should be on the lookout for?
It's a big problem, especially these days. Scammers are getting more and more clever, so it's important to be careful. One of the biggest red flags is unsolicited contact from someone claiming to be from the IRS. The IRS usually communicates through official mail, not phone calls, emails, or texts. So if you get a random call or email out of the blue from someone saying they're with the IRS, be very suspicious.
So I get a call from a Mr. Taxman demanding I pay up right away or face the consequences. I should hang up and report it.
Exactly, especially if they're demanding immediate payment, threatening legal action, or asking for sensitive information like your social security number or bank account details over the phone or email. Those are huge red flags. Hang up right away and report it to the IRS and the Federal Trade Commission. They have systems for reporting tax scams.
Good to know. It's always better to be safe than sorry. What about other types of scams? Are there any other sneaky tricks people should be aware of?
Oh yeah, phishing scams are another common one. These are fake emails or text messages disguised as official IRS communications. They might try to get you to click on a link that takes you to a fake website where they can steal your info.
So never click on suspicious links or give out personal information through channels that aren't secure.
Right.
Right.
Always be careful when you're opening emails or clicking on links, especially if you weren't expecting them or if they look a little off. If you're not sure, contact the IRS directly through their official website or phone number to check if the communication is legitimate.
Great advice. Sounds like the main thing is to be aware, be cautious, and don't be afraid to double-check anything that seems fishy. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about federal taxes and refunds, but what about state taxes? Do the same rules and timelines apply?
That's a good question. But state tax rules and deadlines are all different. It really depends on where you live. Some states have their own income tax systems, while others don't.
So state taxes can make things even more complicated.
They can. And even if your state does have income tax, the filing deadlines and refund processing times might be different from the federal ones we've been talking about.
So it's super important to check with your state's tax agency for their specific rules and deadlines.
Absolutely. Don't assume that what applies to your federal taxes will also apply to your state taxes. Do your research and stay informed.
Makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in the federal stuff and forget about those state-specific requirements. You mentioned optimizing withholding earlier. How do you know if you're having too much or too little tax withheld? What are some signs to look out for?
That's something everyone should think about from time to time, especially if your financial situation has changed. One clear sign that you might be over-withholding is if you always get a big tax refund. While it might seem nice, it means you've basically given the government an interest-free loan throughout the year.
Right. It's like letting them borrow your money for free. Not the best financial strategy.
Exactly. So how do you know if you're under-withholding and might owe money at tax time? Well, if you always end up with a big tax bill when you file, that's a pretty good indicator that you need to adjust your withholding.
So a big refund could mean you're over-withholding, and a big tax bill could mean you're under-withholding. Got it.
Exactly. And you should also think about adjusting your withholding if you have a major life change, like getting married, having a child, starting a new job, or getting a big raise or bonus.
Those are all big events that can definitely affect your taxes.
For sure. It's important to be proactive and adjust your withholding so you don't get any surprises at tax time.
Proactive is the key.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be confusing for some people. Amended returns. What are they, and when might someone need to file one?
Think of an amended return as a do-over for your taxes. It's basically a correction to a tax return you've already filed. You might need to file one if you realize you made a mistake on your original return, like forgetting to report some income, claiming a deduction or credit you weren't eligible for, or using the wrong filing status.
So it's a way to fix any errors or missed information on your original return.
Exactly. And you can't file an amended return electronically. You have to file a paper form 1040X, which is the amended U.S. individual income tax return.
So it's a little more old school. How long do you have to file an amended return? Is there a time limit?
You usually have up to 3 years from the date you filed your original return or 2 years from the date you paid the tax, whichever is later.
3 years? That's good to know. But it's probably still better to file that amended return sooner rather than later, right? Definitely. The sooner you fix the mistake, the better. The longer you wait, the more complicated it can get, especially if you start owing interest or penalties on unpaid taxes.
That makes sense. It's always better to be proactive and deal with tax problems right away rather than letting them pile up. Okay, I have a personal question for you. What's one piece of tax advice you wish everyone knew? Something that could save them time, money, or stress?
That's a great question. If I could give everyone one piece of tax advice, it would be this. Don't be afraid to get professional help if you need it. Taxes can be super complicated, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help from a qualified tax professional.
A lot of people try to do their taxes themselves and end up feeling lost or making mistakes that cost them money.
Exactly. A good tax professional can be a huge help, especially if your taxes are complicated or if you're not sure about certain parts of the tax code. They can help you navigate everything, make sure you're getting all the deductions and credits you're eligible for, and ultimately save you time, stress, and maybe even a lot of money.
Well said. Sometimes it's worth it to invest in expertise, especially when it comes to your finances. Okay, before we move on to our final thoughts on tax refunds, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this. We've got a lot more financial insights to share, and we don't want you to miss out. All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. We're going to talk about some of the bigger economic effects of those tax refunds.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? We're talking about billions of dollars going back into the economy every year. It's got to have some kind of impact.
It's like this massive wave of cash hitting the economy each spring. So what kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, tax refunds actually play a big role in the U.S. economy. They can boost consumer spending, give retail sales a lift, and even affect overall economic growth.
Wow, so it's like a mini economic stimulus package.
Yeah.
But coming from taxpayers instead of the government.
Kinda, yeah. When people get their refunds, they usually spend at least some of it, which puts money back into the economy, and that spending helps businesses big and small. It all adds up to more economic activity.
I see. But I guess the economic impact depends on what people do with those refunds.
Yeah.
Right? It's not all about going on vacation or buying new stuff.
Oh, for sure. It all depends on how people use that money. For example, if a lot of people use their refunds to pay off debt, that can help lower overall debt levels and make things more financially stable, which is good for everyone.
Right. Less debt means more financial breathing room. So what are some other ways people might use their refunds?
Well, some people might put their refunds into savings, which can lead to more investment and potentially higher economic growth in the long run. But if most people are using their refunds to buy things right away, it might create a short-term boost in demand, but it might not have the same long-term effect.
So the impact of those tax refunds is kind of a mixed bag. It depends on what people choose to do with the money, the overall economic climate, and probably a bunch of other factors too.
Definitely. It's complicated. There's no easy answer.
Okay, so let's talk about something that comes up a lot when we talk about tax refunds. The whole idea of tax policy and fairness. Some people say that getting a big refund is actually a sign that the tax system isn't working well. What do you think about that?
It's a good point. And it's something that economists and policymakers have been debating for years. Some people argue that the current system, which often leads to these big refunds, is basically encouraging people to overpay their taxes all year long, giving the government an interest-free loan. They think it would be better and fairer to have a system where people pay closer to the actual amount they owe as they go, instead of getting a big chunk back at the end.
So the argument is that it would be better for everyone to have that money in their pockets throughout the year, rather than letting the government hold on to it.
Right. It's about who has access to that money and how it's being used. If people had more of their own money available, they could maybe invest it, save it, or use it to cover expenses, which could be better for them financially and maybe even help the economy more steadily.
Interesting. So are there arguments against that? I mean, not everyone thinks big refunds are bad, right?
Right. People who like the current system say that it acts as a safety net for taxpayers who might not be good at figuring out how much tax they owe throughout the year. They say that getting a refund can be like forced savings, especially for people who have trouble saving on their own. It's like a built-in savings plan, even if you didn't plan for it.
It's not a simple issue then. There are good points on both sides.
Exactly. It's a trade-off between different priorities and ideas. It comes down to weighing the pros and cons of different tax policies and finding a system that balances efficiency, fairness, and individual financial well-being. It's complicated.
For sure. Well, it sounds like we've covered just about everything there is to know about tax refunds. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? Any final thoughts?
Just one more thing. Even though tax refunds can feel like winning the lottery, it's important to remember that it's not free money. It's money you've already paid in taxes. So, use it wisely. Pay off debt. Build up your savings. Invest in your goals. Make it work for you.
Great advice. Don't waste that hard-earned money.
Right. Make it count.
Okay, everyone. That's our look at the world of tax refunds. Hope you found this helpful and maybe even learned a few things. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. We've got more great conversations coming up, and we'd love for you to join us. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.